about, and UPI held it for a few minutes because they realized the gravity of that statement. And if they put it out, they better be darn sure that it is accurate.
Right.
And I talked to the man who was manning UPI's wire service national headquarters in Chicago here a while back, and he was telling me the story that they saw it come across their inside A wire, and they were just really reluctant to put it out to their broadcast clients. They finally did, and that is what you'll hear Gary DeLon, the KLIF reporter, report now.
We are still trying to get in touch with Parkland Hospital. We hope to have confirmation. The latest report that we have from one press source, Clint Hill, a Secret Service agent assigned to Mrs. Kennedy, said he's dead as the president was lifted from the rear of the White House touring car. Mr. Kennedy was rushed to the Parkland Hospital emergency room. Other White House officials were in doubt as the corridors of the hospital erupted in pandemonium. The incident occurred at Elmer Houston in the downtown area as the motorcade wended its way through the region. Newsmen in the motorcade did hear the 3 bursts from the automatic rifle. It is impossible, and was so at the time, to tell where the chief executive was struck by the bullets. We are now in contact with one of our news units, and we are going to switch you now for another report from the downtown section of Dallas.
So long again, and Group Mobile News Unit number 4, and the police cordon and the widespread search net continues. We still do not know whether this would-be assassin is trapped in the building or in the area at all. The search continues. We're going to vacate this mobile unit momentarily, and we'll be back in touch with you just as quickly as possible. KLIF newsman and mobile units spread throughout all the strategic spots covering this story. We'll bring you full details momentarily. Joe Long, Group Mobile News Unit number 4, 1190 an hour.
Now, the interesting thing there is you can just hear the trepidation in his voice, because he's getting this off the wire machine, he's looking at it, and as he's trying to read it before he broadcasts it, you can just tell that there's a little pregnant pause there where he's just not real sure he ought to read this, but he goes ahead and does that. I asked Gary in an interview I did with him recently specifically what he was thinking when he saw that and read it. Let's play 19 now.
Well, that was UPI, and I realized the gravity of it and just paused to choose not to repeat it again.
So he read it, and as soon as he read it, he kind of had the feeling he probably shouldn't have done that, and as the broadcast continues on, he chooses not to repeat that until much, much later on.
Now, it was about here, at this point, that the speakers at Brown Junior High that day came on with all this.
Right.
Because I think I remember hearing that last cut that you played.
The He's Dead?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I remember hearing that. Prior to that, we'd been hearing, like in the halls and stuff, that somebody shot the president. But that was just it. I mean, and who knew if it was true? Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. They didn't have any...
They actually turned Cliff on and played it over the speakers?
Yes.
Wow.
At that, I mean, just all of a sudden, I was sitting in Mr. Stoll's math class, room 121 at Brown Junior High, and all of a sudden, the intercom comes on.
Right.
And they're rolling that.
That's amazing.
And I think I remember hearing Gary DeLon on with that.
Well, that was the first quote that anybody in any capacity gave that said, he's dead.
Yeah.
And that was a Secret Service agent. And in retrospect, Gary tells me that they were very reluctant to repeat that because, yes, it was a Secret Service agent. It's somewhat official, but it's not completely official. So they were just real concerned about continuing to report something as serious as that.
At the time, he ripped that off the API wire, right? Or the UPI wire.
UPI, yes. He did, but again, that was just quoting Clint Hill, the Secret Service agent. So he felt okay from that regard that it wasn't something made up. But the one thing they did not want to do is report a dead president when there was not a dead president.
Because it's not like it is, you know, you do that now because in everybody's quest to be first, they'll put out anything and then they'll come back and go, well, that's not really true.
Right, and we've seen the example of that many times in recent American history where reporters have reported one thing.
Well, like the election of 2000.
Well, sure.
I mean, there's your big example there, but back then there was a big knack to be accurate.
So the story just continues to evolve as the broadcast goes, and it's just amazing how accurate they kept everything and how they kept their composure as well as they could, despite the fact that it was quite emotional for all of them to be involved in. Let's go down to cut number 21 if we can. This is Gary DeLon again, who gave me an idea of what he was thinking, especially during those first few minutes of his broadcast.
All right, go ahead and play this one. We'll take a break next.
Do we have that? Okay, we'll get back to that.
Okay. All right, more. Say again? Oh, all right. Okay, all right. More with Steve Eberhardt of historyofcliff.com on what you heard on KLIF November 22nd, 1963. Next here on Sports Radio 1310, The Ticket. 1, 2, 3. The Dallas broadcast veteran and major domo of that website is here with us. We're listening to KLIF audio of November 22nd, 1963, around noontime and in the hours before and after. Now, we were going to play something a minute ago that for whatever reason didn't fire off. What was that?
Yeah, this was Gary DeLon, the reporter that initially was reporting on KLIF. And I talked to him and I said, you know, give me an idea of how you were feeling emotionally because, you know, all of this traumatic stuff is going on. What was it like being there? How did you feel at that time?
It was total shock. And I tell you this, in my own mind, I thought it was going to be fatal.
So even though he was not reporting that on the air, he was getting some other unofficial information off the air and stuff, and these guys were just trying to hold it all together as the moments go on. As I mentioned, Gordon McClendon was at the Trade Mart. He commandeered a Dallas police car and got a Dallas cop. If you can imagine in that moment how busy the police department guys were and all the patrolmen and stuff, he somehow convinced one of them, probably not so difficult at the time because of who he was, to give him an express ride from the Trade Mart to his downtown Cliff studios on Jackson Street. And some Dallas PD guy did it. So he arrives at the Cliff studios, walks in, and goes straight to the air studio and goes on the air and begins co-anchoring with Joe Long and Gary DeLon. Gordon begins to broadcast, and here's number 13, part of what he began to say. He felt a little more comfortable in reporting some of this as opposed to Gary DeLon and Joe Long, who were very reluctant to report rumors.
We are in direct contact. We have been unable yet to verify the rumors, and to this point, they are strictly rumors that the president is dead. We will not know until the word comes through officially, but there have been strong indications that the president has expired. But again, we repeat, it is unofficial. President Kennedy and Governor John Connally of Dallas, of Texas, having been cut down by assassin's bullets today at lunch. They were shot as they toured downtown Dallas in an open car. Specialists are arriving at the hospital, which I might mention is a scene of wild pandemonium. As we were coming from the Trade Mart a moment ago in a Dallas police car, there was a call for 20 additional police units at Parkland Hospital. And incidentally, on the 5th floor of the downtown building from which the president and the governor were shot, they have now discovered empty rifle hulls.
So now they're getting information about the rifle hulls being found. You know, as we mentioned, just as every moment goes by, there's just a little bit more trickling in. The reports continue to come in here, there, and everywhere. They're getting all kinds of conflicting reports at some times, and more of the unconfirmed reports. Number 14 here.
And it was just, you could say the motorcade was almost home free at the time this took place. It was leaving almost there. It was leaving the most congested area of downtown. From there on, the route would have been relatively free of bystanders because it was a major expressway. Clint Hill, a Secret Service agent assigned to Mrs. Kennedy, said as the president was lifted from the rear of the White House touring car at Parkland Hospital, he's dead. However, that again comes into the category of an unconfirmed statement. We can only give you unconfirmed statements at this point. There are strong indications that the president has expired, but there has been no bulletin to that effect, and as Joe has told you, the last rites and sacrament have definitely been administered.
So now
was that Gordon McClendon there?
Yes, that was Gordon.
So he's reporting for the first time there that the last rites had been administered.
They had just reported that a moment or two before, and he's repeating it basically. But again, as the moments continue on, there's much speculation here. There's, in fact, other news media at the time that Gordon was making those statements. Other news media were reporting that they had unconfirmed reports that the president was dead. So a lot of rumors were flying around, a lot of reports that he was already dead. They wanted to be very, very careful not to say it until it was absolutely official. And they had Roy Nichols, one of their reporters, at Parkland Hospital, who was calling in saying it appears that that is what has happened, but again, nothing has been official. Then the moment comes, I believe it was 1:38 Dallas time, when the official word does come across the United Press International teletype as a flash. The second of the day, the first one occurred during the first few moments where they said, flash, the president has been seriously, perhaps fatally wounded. Now comes the second flash, and a flash on the teletypes during those times was something of enormous magnitude. You saw a flash on a teletype in those days maybe once in a decade, maybe. The news had to be, in the words of the United Press International, earth-shaking. And indeed, these were when the flash came across, which I have a copy of, that says, flash, president dead. You can hear in this report, Gordon McClendon is continuing his co-anchoring, and Joe Long rips the report off of the teletype and interrupts Gordon McClendon with this announcement.
Well, of course, the major attention is being focused upon the condition of the president. No one yet has any authoritative reports on the nature of the wounds to Governor Connolly. Bullet wounds were plainly visible in Connolly's chest, so we know that he was shot in the chest. His condition, however, remains more of a mystery than that of the President of the United States. The President is clearly, gravely, critically, and perhaps fatally wounded. There are strong indications that he may already have expired, although that is not official. We repeat, not official. But the extent of the injuries to Governor Connolly is a closely shrouded secret at the moment. President Kennedy is dead, Gordon. This is official word. The President is dead. The President, ladies and gentlemen, is dead at Parkland Hospital in Dallas.
And so that was it. That was the announcement they had all been waiting for. And that was the moment when the air just simply came out of the balloon.
Well, you could hear it in Gordon's voice, in Gordon McClendon's voice.
Right. You know, it's one thing for things to be, you know, speculated upon and unconfirmed reported this or that, but when you actually have the words come across, it was.
Yeah, let's hear this again, because I want to hear, because Gordon McClendon's just kind of going on saying, hey, this is just rumor, we're not reporting it, but he's telling what he knows. But when it becomes official, listen to his voice, how it changes.
Right.
Well, of course, the major attention is being focused upon the condition of the president. No one yet has any authoritative reports on the nature of the wounds to Governor Connolly. Bullet wounds were plainly visible in Connolly's chest, so we know that he was shot in the chest. His condition, however, remains more of a mystery than that of the President of the United States. The president is clearly, gravely, critically, and perhaps fatally wounded. There are strong indications that he may already have expired, although that is not official. We repeat, not official. But the extent of the injuries to Governor Connolly is a closely shrouded secret at the moment. President Kennedy is dead, Gordon. This is official word. The President is dead. The President, ladies and gentlemen, is dead at Parkland Hospital in Dallas.
You know, as many times as I have heard this, and it's got to be hundreds, if not more, as many times as I've listened to those words come across that tape, I still get chills on my arms just hearing those words, because you get the enormous gravity of that statement.
Well, to me, it was like he was a newsman giving all the facts, and then when he finds out that he's actually dead, then he becomes a human being.
Right.
I mean, he gets out of his newsman voice, and all of a sudden he becomes a human being like everybody else when he says the president is dead.
Well, because it's his president, too. It's everybody's president, and no matter how you felt about him politically or otherwise at the time, you know, an event like that is just something that you hope that you never, ever see.
You know, we were talking yesterday about the KERA thing, the thing that they did, about how the assassination was broadcast here locally. They ran it a couple nights ago. It's very, very good if you haven't seen it yet. Hopefully they'll rerun it again. And one thing that really, and I remember from being around, I was old enough to kind of get a little bit of a grasp on this, but not really. But one point that really drives home was that back then, if you were a right-wing conservative, and you were out there on the fringe of the right, and you were looking for a place to really rock and roll with all that, Dallas was it, man.
Well, you're right about that. I mean, the John Birch Society and other organizations were huge in the Dallas area. The newspaper that morning had advertisements taken out.
I don't think that any major newspaper would print that full-page ad that they have, the one that says, "Welcome, Mr. Kennedy."
Wanted for treason or something such. Remember that?
Yeah.
Just amazing, the anti-Kennedy sentiment that was alive and well in Dallas at the time. But the interesting thing is, that motorcade, whereas everybody was so nervous because of what had happened to Adlai Stevenson just a few weeks before, where somebody
didn't he get bopped in the head?
He got bopped in the head with a sign, and there was a report that somebody spit at him, and there's kind of a little bit of controversy over whether that happened. But the sentiment in the city was very strong, and they were very worried that an incident would happen, and they thought that they had taken every possible precaution. But then in retrospect, as you were mentioning earlier as I was driving up here, you know, how they possibly allowed all of the windows on the parade route to be open.
That should have been the first thing they get at.
How they allowed a president to ride in an open car is you know, in disbelief. That would never happen today, I wouldn't imagine. And you know, it did, and they thought that it would be all right. They thought that they had taken care of it.
Now when they have presidential motorcades, they're usually in secrecy. They don't let you know the route. And the route was posted in the morning news, I believe, or the Times Herald.
I think both, in fact. But yes, the route was posted. So the reason they did that is because they wanted to get as big a crowd on the streets of Dallas as they could possibly get. And they did. They accomplished that completely.
I believe on the show I watched on KURA, they said 250,000 people.
Yeah, there was a report of 250,000 people.
And what was the population of Dallas at the time?
I don't have any idea.
Well, probably, I don't know.
I don't know.
Maybe 1 million people?
Clearly, a lot of people came from outside of Dallas into the city to see it. But the whole downtown area just emptied out onto the streets, and people were hanging out of windows from the high-rises and so forth. And, you know, when you think about that now, because we have the knowledge of what can happen, it's just mind-boggling that they allowed that event to happen that way.
Yeah, and it's not like the concerns over what might happen weren't widely known. They were.
They were.
You heard people talk about what might happen when the president visits here in a few days. I mean, it was very open, you know?
Is there any place like that now in the United States where the president just wouldn't go to because of the hostile environment? I don't think there is.
I don't think that there is. But, again, a president wouldn't ride in an open car on the streets of any city, anywhere at all anymore, I don't think. I don't think there's ever been, I may be wrong, but I don't think there's ever been an open car motorcade since then, for obvious reasons.
You know, we have... you know, much smaller level. Ryan and I have both been at ballparks when the president has thrown out the first pitch.
I've done that too.
You can't imagine the security we have to go through, and where you can and you can't go. Remember that, Ryan?
Oh yeah, sure.
It's unbelievable. And maybe they learned from an obvious mistake that they made, because allowing somebody to get in basically a sniper's nest.
Yep.
I mean, they allowed whoever was up, because somebody was up there.
Yep.
They allowed them to just get up there and get a bead on the president with a scope.
But you know what also you have to consider when you think about this is the nature of America at that time. It's like a lot of times people don't think something will happen because it never did.
Right.
You know, there was no precedent. You know, no one imagined someone would actually try to shoot him. No one imagined that would happen.
I'll bet you.
So they didn't think it.
I'll bet in 1865 they were saying, how could somebody sneak up in a box and shoot the president in the back of the head? They were probably thinking the same thing then.
Well, because now there's a precedent. We know that somebody might do it.
Right.
And, you know, as bad as this may sound, there's people out there today that would do it. There's people out there today that would do it. Mm-hmm. And fortunately, you know, we have the security to prevent that from happening. I mean, just a few weeks ago, a car down there in Mississippi rammed the convention that President Bush was in.
They were just trying to get to a Walmart down there in Mississippi.
Probably right.
All right, some final thoughts with Steve next here on Sports Radio 1310, The Ticket.
Hi, this is
Hart of historyofcliff.com out here today. So I guess the question must be asked, where did you come by all this stuff?
Well, that's a good question. The audio tapes that I have, and there's the first hour of some of what we have been playing this afternoon is on realradio.com, another nonprofit website that just features old radio station air checks, tapes, and things like that. Big trip down memory lane for a lot of people, and there's some contributions that I've made to it. The first hour of the Cliff coverage of the JFK assassination is on there. Now, what's interesting is this weekend, they're going to play the entire day's broadcast in real time as it occurred. So on Saturday, if you go to realradio.com, you'll be able to hear the actual broadcast of Cliff from that day all afternoon and into the evening from about 11:30 till 10 o'clock at night, just as it aired. So if you heard any of this today and it sounded interesting, check that out. But the interesting story about where these tapes came from. What are these tapes? These are what are called logger tapes. And a lot of times radio stations have a big tape machine. Now it's probably done digitally, but back then it was the big old reel-to-reel tapes, and they would record what's going out over the air 24 hours a day. Several reasons stations back then would want to do that. Mainly, if there was a question about something that was broadcast, now you can go back and pull the tape and listen to it and say, this is what actually happened. If a client challenged that maybe their commercial didn't air at a special time, you could prove, in fact, that it did. Or you were doing a contest and a contestant challenged you and said, you said this and I said that and I should have won and you said I didn't, they can challenge that. So that was one of the reasons they kept a lot of these tapes. In 1963, when the assassination occurred, those tapes were rolling at KLIF and other stations as well around the Dallas-Fort Worth market. And a few weeks after the assassination, the Secret Service made the rounds of the Dallas-Fort Worth radio stations and picked up a lot of those tapes for the reason of studying them and listening to them, mainly because they knew a lot of these radio stations, Cliff's certainly, had firsthand accounts, eyewitness reports from people they interviewed or people that they spoke to on the telephone who gave eyewitness accounts and those kinds of things to the reporters. And some of that is featured on some of these audio tapes that you can listen to on Real Radio this weekend. So the Secret Service gathered up all these tapes and brought them back to Washington, studied them. Main reason is they wanted to be sure that if there was any witness that the radio stations had talked to, they wanted to be sure they had also talked to him and just cross-check it and make sure they've talked to everybody that's out there. They didn't want to have a situation where a witness maybe talked to a radio station and then just went away and no official person had contact with them because they may have some valuable information. Whether or not they gained any from that, I don't know. But after the Secret Service was finished with all the tapes, instead of returning them to the radio stations, they sent them over to the National Archives. And for years and years and years, they sat in the National Archives. They were part of an exhibit in the Library of All Recorded Sound up there. And if someone wanted to come get a copy of anything that's in there, not unlike any other artifact they have at the National Archives, for a fee, they will make a copy of it for you. So in 1975, a gentleman did, in fact, do that, go to the National Archives and get a copy of all of these KLIF tapes. And there were, just lots and lots of tapes because it ran from 11:30 a.m. to 10:15 at night. So the entire time, all those tapes were there on reel-to-reel. This guy sat there and made copies of all this. Sometime after that, the area there at the National Archives that stored all of this material was moved from one location to another. And in the process of doing that, they didn't lose the tapes. It's my opinion that they are still there, but they don't know where they are. Wow. They haven't cataloged them properly or some such. And today, if you call and ask for them, they can't find them. So this guy's copy was the only existing copy of it. And he gave it to me a few years ago.
How did you find out about him? How did you?
He found the website, the historyofcliff.com.
So he just contacted you and said, hey, I've got this.
Yeah. I had written a part of the historyofcliff.com about the JFK assassination coverage. Not as much as is on there now, but just a little blip. This guy emailed me, I guess, one day, and he said, I've got this. Would you like to have it? Now,
that's like hitting the lottery for you.
Yeah, just out of the clear blue. An asterisk to this, in 1964, KLIF did produce on Capitol Records a recording called The Fateful Hours, which featured an edited portion of the Cliff air check from that day, and they put it out as an album and sold it. Not a whole lot of them. You can still find them on eBay occasionally, stuff like that. I've got a couple of copies of them, and they're good, but they are edited.
Edited. I mean, you got
they took out all the so I've got the actual thing, the raw tape, and pretty sure I've got the only copy of it. I've given a copy of it to the 6th Floor Museum. Gary Mack and the group over there have it. I don't know if they've put it up as part of any display yet or not. I haven't been in there since I've done that a couple years ago. And I've given you, Mike, a copy of it as well for your own listening pleasure. And again, the copy will run on realradio.com over the weekend on Saturday. But that's how I came across the tapes. And, I was living in Austin for a couple of years there, and that's when I got them when I was down there. And I just would put these things in my car whenever I'd be driving back and forth to work or wherever. And I was just, it took just hours and hours and days upon days to get through all this because it's just so much material. But, you know, through the course of time, I did listen to each and every bit of it. It was just mesmerizing. It was just historical. It was compelling. It was just almost agonizing to listen to it sometimes, but just so amazing you couldn't turn it off. And, you know, it was an incident about a subject which was of interest to me ever since I was a child anyway. You know, it's kind of the merging of two interests and passions that I have, if you will. That being the study of Cliff and then the study of the JFK assassination, because I've long followed that, read every book that's ever been out on it, interviewed a lot of the people through my career in radio various times that came through who had things to offer. And so I have a lot of knowledge about the whole JFK assassination, and then obviously a lot of interest in the radio station, and it's kind of a melding of the two. And for me, it's just been really interesting to be a part of this in my own little minuscule way.
Well, I'll tell you, all those words that you just used, all those adjectives you threw out a moment ago would certainly apply to what you've brought to the presentation today. This has really been good stuff, Steve.
Thank you.
The website is historyofcliff.com, all one word, historyofklif.com.
Right.
And this is a non-profit venture for you, right?
This doesn't make me any money, unfortunately. I wish it did. But, yeah, I threw this thing up on the web.
You're going to wish, because you're about to get a few hits right now.
Yeah, I expect that so. I wish I had a nickel for every one that I get, because I'd probably be a lot happier person right now. But actually, you know, my pleasure in this doesn't come from the money of it or anything like that. In fact, just today, I had to pay more money to keep it online for another couple of years. It's not a whole lot, but I do it just for my own pleasure mainly, but it's been just a joy to hear from all of the people that I've heard from over the last few years who have stumbled upon this website and, you know, have written me and emailed me and called me and sent their contributions to it, and or just, you know, every day I get 5 to 8, maybe 10 emails from somebody that'll say, found your website, really took me back, this was really cool, and I remember such and such that happened at the McClendon Drive-In on Central Expressway at Forest Lane one time, and they'll tell me a little tidbit, you know, and I keep a file of all those things. I don't know what I'll end up ever doing with this stuff, but it's just neat that that I've done something that people like. And
I think you got one of those from me, which pretty much started this ball rolling.
That's right. I mean, just one day out of the blue, I got an email from you, and I was like, wow, I know Mike Ryan. You know, listen to the radio station. I don't think we had ever met or talked before that, but it was just really great to hear from you, and not unlike that email, I've had hundreds, if not thousands, of others. So it's been a lot of fun. It's definitely taken on a life of its own, if you will. But it's just neat to be able to give something out there to the public and let them enjoy a little tidbit of what has brought me some pleasure as well. My wife thinks I'm crazy, you know, for obsessing over this.
Yeah, wives always do.
You know, it's just something they will never understand.
No, they're not wired that way.
Well, I'll tell you what was great for us, having a real radio guy on with us. We don't get to hang around very many real radio people.
Really?
No.
You think I'm real?
The ticket? Are you kidding me? We're just a bunch of knuckleheads up there, man.
I enjoy listening to you guys.
We like to hang around real radio people, so it's
been a pleasure to be here.
Well, this has been great stuff, Steve. We can't thank you enough, man.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Steve Everhart of historyofcliff.com.
Wow.
Very good stuff. Again, probably about the best thing I can say about the website is that Steve has really gone to great lengths to get it all right. And if this is the kind of thing that you're interested in, or I don't know, if you're a transplant from out of town and you want to get a feel for the way things really were here in Dallas back then, I can think of scarcely a better place where you can find that.
I appreciate that.
All right, we will have the Ranch Report with Mickey Spagnola coming up next here on The Ticket.
Well, of course, of the president, no one yet has any authoritative report on the nature of the wounds to Governor Connolly. Bullet wounds were plainly visible in Connolly's chest, so we know that he was shot in the chest. His condition, however, remains more of a mystery than that of the President of the United States. The President is clearly, gravely, critically, and perhaps fatally wounded. There are strong indications that he may already have expired, although that is not official. We repeat, not official. But the extent of the injuries to Governor Connolly is a closely shrouded secret at the moment. President Kennedy is dead, Gordon. This is official word. The President is dead. The President, ladies and gentlemen, is dead at Parkland Hospital in Dallas.
He was a loving husband and father who brought a special kind of human warmth to the great house on Washington's Pennsylvania Avenue. He was a man of great human feelings who constantly risked his political future to back causes that were not the most popular, but causes in which he believed, causes he felt were just. But no idea was ever killed with a bullet. And the president's ideas, his plans for a stronger and better nation, his driving ambition to create a better life for his fellow Americans, the very assassin who took his life among them, will live on. It has been said that no one, not even men of great dedication and skill like those who comprise the Secret Service, can completely protect the President of the United States from physical harm. And no group knows that better than the Secret Service itself. You cannot protect a man, any man, from an inspired maniac or a deranged killer. But most of all, you cannot protect a man from simple, blind hate. A lot of people kill the President today. And the killers are the hate peddlers who carry all kinds of names and labels. Hate peddlers who strike in the dark. Hate peddlers with their venomous little publications that come through the mail without official addresses. Hate peddlers who whisper libels about men in positions of power. Hate peddlers who harbor in their dark hearts cancerous notions about what is right and what is wrong. Like another president who was martyred, Abraham Lincoln, President Kennedy was the target of every half-baked extremist group in the nation. They attacked his Roman Catholicism, his fight to bring equal rights to American Negroes, his policies of social welfare, his dedication to the liberal philosophy of government, his program of social reform. John Fitzgerald Kennedy will not live in history as just a very popular president, whose term encompassed some of the most complex crises in United States history. The sick mind that thought up the heinous act that ended his life has immortalized his victim. John Fitzgerald Kennedy is now a martyr to the things in which he believed, and those ideals for which he fought are that much stronger now that he has died for them. And what a sickening irony it is that this man who came through so much should die at the hands of a man worth so little. But more than one pair of hands killed the President of the United States. And I think it is important to know what motivated the sick mind behind the assassin's fingers, and the answers are obvious. President John Fitzgerald Kennedy was murdered in cold blood by that small minority who feed on hate. Any one of their number might have fired the deadly bullets that ended the president's life, given the time and the place and the opportunity. Sow hate and you reap death. And these things all Americans tonight should remember. The people who blatantly preach that Supreme Court Justice Earl Warren should be hanged can share in the guilt of this day. The people who spat and cursed their ambassador to the United Nations, Adlai Stevenson, can wonder if their own emotions are under proper control. And the people who hate their fellow man because the Creator happened to make him different from them would do well to examine their own consciences this day. We do not know the philosophy of the killer of President Kennedy, but we do know that to kill you must hate first or be completely insane. And even the insane person must be motivated to action. What makes a man move to the extremes of erratic action? Perhaps even the psychiatrist cannot give us the complete answer to that question, but this we do know. Every extremist who harangues meetings and writes in onerous publications and spreads venomous lies about those with whom he disagrees contributes to the hate that spills over into assassination by person or persons unknown. The killer may have been anti-Catholic, anti-Negro, anti-liberal, or what, or he may have felt as other deranged men have before him that he was on a divinely inspired mission to save the world from someone or something. Mr. Kennedy's body has been returned to the Capitol, where it will lie in state at the White House tomorrow and to the Capitol building on Sunday. And tonight one can only imagine the innermost feelings of Lyndon B. Johnson as he took the presidential oath of office a short time after Mr. Kennedy was pronounced dead. Despite rumors to the contrary, the president and the vice president were friends who enjoyed each other's respect and confidence. Even though they had once been political foes in the same party and had even opposed each other for the Democratic nomination for president, they had welded themselves into a close working team. Now Mr. Johnson is president of these United States, and already, although it is still only hours ago that a smiling President Kennedy was greeting that vast crowd in Dallas, Mr. Johnson carries the greatest single burden of responsibility in the free world. And a short time ago in Washington, President Johnson expressed his deep sorrow and personal loss. and prayed for the help of all Americans and God. Few will doubt that this man can handle the job he accepts with so heavy a heart. And back in 1957, he suffered a massive heart attack. But he today is possessed of boundless energy and enough willpower for half a dozen men. Those who know Johnson best say he will be up to the monumental tasks that lie ahead, and in the confused days that will follow this one, leaders of both political parties will rally around the new president to assist him in every way they can. No man is indispensable. Mr. Lincoln was not. Franklin D. Roosevelt was not. John Fitzgerald Kennedy, not. But like those two men whom he admired and respected so very much, John Fitzgerald Kennedy was much loved and will be long remembered. Sometimes when a man dies in a violent way, a legend is born, and the things he held dear live on far beyond anyone's power to detract. This has been a dark and shameful day for the nation. Shameful. It has lost a great leader, and the personal loss to his family cannot even be estimated. But this is a worldwide loss as well, from all over the world. Messages of condolences have been pouring into the White House, and no one will ever know what commitments and understandings between the president and other chiefs of state are in need of clarification now. But the nation will move on. In Mr. Kennedy's own words, it must move forward. It was moving forward with him. Now it must move forward without him. And tonight I am speaking to you from Chicago, where this program emanates each weekday. This is a city that dearly loved the president. It was and is frankly a democratic town. But here in Chicago, the respect and admiration for President Kennedy transcended party lines. This is a city that always turned out in force and would wait hours to see Mr. Kennedy on his infrequent visits here. His picture peers out from many a window, from the plushest high-rise apartments to the most grinding slums. The ex-war hero with the infectious grin seemed to have a special kind of appeal for Chicagoans who still remain rugged individuals fiercely loyal to their local heroes. And today Chicagoans grouped in the rain to discuss this day's loss in almost hushed tones. Places of entertainment were almost barren of customers. You could walk 5 blocks without seeing a smile, and I know I did. Chicago has a heavy heart tonight, and I'm sure its mood matches that of the nation. This is Alex Dreyer, ABC News, Chicago.
This is WBAP 570 in Fort Worth. More news on the tragic assassination of President Kennedy follows on 570.
You're listening to JFK 40, The Lost Kennedy Tapes, from November 22nd, 1963. Underwritten by Jerry Reynolds and the Jerry Reynolds family of dealerships on News Talk 820, WBAP.
WBAP 820, Fort Worth. And all the time on the way home. And she knew from the doctors, she was told on the way to Washington, that the doctors had told the party with the president that they had never had any hope of saving his life the minute they saw his wounds. One through the head, another through the neck. The first wound, the major one, had done considerable damage, brain damage. Tissue was destroyed. Apparently, the president had not regained consciousness. He was only for one instant aware that he'd been shot. As one eyewitness had said, in reference to that one instant, there was that awful look on his face, and he slumped forward to the floor where Mrs. Kennedy kneeled with him. Incidentally, at the oath-taking, aboard the plane, just before it returned to Washington, plane Air Force One, President Johnson put his hand on the Bible, his left hand, and he swore, as we're all familiar with the oath, to faithfully execute the duties of president and to defend the Constitution. And the oath, as we've noted, was administered by a United States district judge, the first woman ever to administer the oath to the President of the United States. Incidentally, Mrs. Sarah D. Hughes, Judge Sarah D. Hughes, had been named to office by President John Kennedy in 1961. And now for a report on the inevitable trend of events in the center of Washington. To Ray Scherer at the White House in Washington.
American President Lyndon Johnson is holding his first function as President of the United States. He got out of the helicopter here at 6:26. First we saw red lights coming out of the sky, then we heard the roar of the chopper, then the lights went on, the door opened, out came Mrs. Johnson, then came Lyndon Johnson, and then came George Ball of the State Department, Secretary McNamara, Mr. Bundy, the President's Special Assistant for Security Affairs, Walter Jenkins, Assistant to President Johnson. They paused briefly in the lights. There were a few handshakes. President Johnson stopped to shake the hands of members of the press. His face looked very grave. He walked directly to his office, and he is now conducting business. A few minutes after he landed, another helicopter landed, and out came Senate Majority Leader Mike Mansfield and Senate Republican Leader Everett Dirksen. The others are gathered here. As soon as this security meeting is over, presumably he will meet with the leaders. Any questions?
I would like to point out, Ray, are you on with me?
Yes, I hear you, Morgan.
You know, we've had very, very little difficulty with these circuits today. We can't call it fortunate, but it's fortuitous at least that we're having so little trouble with our circuits. Only one missed circuit since the death of the president. But I'd like to ask more, or call your attention.
Yeah.
You have covered so many events in the White House. The heart attack, I remember you and I were on together for hours. When the heart attack occurred
in 1955.
President Eisenhower's time, I believe none of our reporters is more competent or equipped to comment on this very insistent idea that the leaders of our nation are now conveying to us of the continuity of the American government. Foreigners are so little aware of that. Would you like to comment on that point?
Well, of course, President Johnson has been intimately in on everything that has happened having to do with foreign policy. He has made a number of trips to the president. He sits in on National Security Council sessions. He was with the president in his last hours. He's now back here immediately. He sits down with the cabinet members. There will be no possible lapse. What they're doing now is filling him in on every situation in which impinges on foreign and military affairs. Secretary McNamara is presumably going over what the situation is in Vietnam, how our forces are deployed in Germany, what the situation is vis-a-vis the Russians along the Autobahn, everything that could possibly flare up. And Mr. Bundy is, of course, filling him in on all sorts of vital security matters which are only privy to the president and his inner circle. Now they've been given to Mr. Johnson. The thing that strikes me about this whole occurrence today is that it again brings out what a thread of tragedy runs through the Kennedy family. Brother Joe was killed in a Navy plane crash in World War II. The sister was killed in a plane crash in 1945. The president was almost killed in World War II in the Pacific. Later, he almost died during an operation on his back. His father was felled by a stroke. Their son died in August, and now this.
Yes, it is to all of us the same, and I hardly need comment on the feeling of all Americans. The exceptions, I suppose, are so few we can ignore them at this time. Incidentally, yes. Ray Scherer, we have on with us the senior European correspondent of NBC in London, who also has dealt in the general areas of leadership that you're so familiar with. And he's on with us. Joseph C. Harsh, would you come in, Joe?
Yes, I'm here. I hear you.
Do you have any questions at the moment on what you would like answered about things here, or do you have some suggestions for us?
Morgan, one point I think I would like to make, if I can, is that I'm, we were all stunned when this thing happened, but the tributes that have just come from all the leaders in this country are really quite remarkable. Prime Minister Sir Alec Hume has just done a long television statement about it, which starts out saying that at times when the mind and heart stand still, everything in one cries out in protest. And he went on for a long and eloquent tribute, followed by the leader of the opposition, Harold Wilson. Let's see, what did he say? He recalled the remark on Lincoln's death, now he belongs to the ages, and he said, that's the way we will think of the death of President Kennedy. Joe Grimman said that all through Britain, people will feel tonight that this is a totally unexpected personal tragedy. He will be deeply mourned for a very long time. Some of the morning newspapers are out now with the whole front page on this and nothing else. This is deeply felt over here.
It certainly serves to illustrate the intimacy of the alliance between the